Today, we're looking at rapid military escalation in West Asia, advanced Chinese cyber espionage happening right on LinkedIn, unexpected back-channel diplomacy in New Delhi, and China's tightening grip on global critical minerals. Welcome to Zenith Global News.
For those of you studying modern foreign policy, this explainer is going to break down 4 absolutely crucial shifts: the escalating situation in West Asia, cyber espionage via LinkedIn, back-channel diplomacy in Delhi, and China's critical mineral monopoly.
Let's dive right into our lead story, the West Asian front.
So look at recent events. We've seen an Apache helicopter downed, strongholds in Beirut bombed, and Iranian petrochemical facilities targeted. What does this all mean? Well, it signals a definitive end to Iran's era of quote-unquote strategic patience. In this current climate, restraint is basically being viewed as a weakness.
Now, we're seeing some massive friction when it comes to policy. On one hand, you have Washington pushing hard for ceasefire negotiations and trying to expand the Abraham Accords. But on the ground, the local military realities are totally different, dictated by continued Israeli strikes and resistance from IRGC-backed Hezbollah. To put things in perspective, Congress passed $10.6 billion in direct U.S. military aid for Israel back in 2023. Now, if you study international relations, you know that financial backing of that massive magnitude traditionally equals serious policy leverage, right?
Well, actually, despite an additional $6.5 billion weapons package being announced for early 2026, Washington is really struggling to rein in its ally. All of that on-paper leverage, it just isn't translating to actual operational control on the ground.
And domestically, things are shifting too. A recent Pew Research Center report shows that 60% of Americans now hold a negative view of Israel. That highlights a massive misalignment between current foreign policy actions and everyday public sentiment.
So why the diplomatic gridlock? You have to look at past U.S. decisions. Withdrawing from the 2015 Iran deal, moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, and executing strikes right during Qatar-hosted negotiations. Impartially speaking, all of these actions have severely damaged America's credibility as a neutral broker in the region.
Furthermore, we have to look at the human cost. The Gaza conflict toll has now surpassed 72,000 casualties. This immense human suffering literally acts as an accelerant for regional instability, and it breeds deep mistrust in any U.S.-led peace initiatives. And survey data from the Air Barometer clearly shows the geopolitical fallout of all this. Regional favorability is actively shifting away from the United States. Instead, local populations are increasingly looking toward emerging rivals, specifically China and Russia, for regional order.
Strategically speaking, this means the U.S. is being forced to refocus its attention on West Asia. And here's the catch: shifting critical military assets away from the Indo-Pacific absolutely pleases Beijing, while pulling focus off the Ukraine conflict ultimately benefits Moscow. It's a huge strategic puzzle.
Moving on to our next global dispatch: cyber espionage on LinkedIn.
We are currently tracking a tactic known as digital honey trapping. Essentially, Chinese intelligence operatives are disguising themselves as legitimate HR firms or consultancies. They're posting fake job offers right on professional networks to extract highly sensitive data from unsuspecting applicants.
And you might be wondering, who exactly are they targeting? Primarily, it's foreign policy experts, defense analysts, and strategic affairs professionals. By going after the very architects of national security, this kind of silent espionage seriously threatens global defense infrastructures.
Let's pivot to our third global dispatch: back-channel diplomacy in Delhi.
Now, traditionally, when you have Western Hemisphere diplomatic disputes, they get mediated in places like Washington, D.C. or Caracas. But this week, a critical, high-level back-channel pivot actually took place over in New Delhi.
That's right, Venezuela's Delcy Rodriguez met directly with U.S. Ambassador Sergio Gore, and choosing India as the neutral ground for this meeting, that really highlights New Delhi's rapidly expanding role as a major, independent global diplomatic hub. It's a fascinating shift to watch.
And finally, our last global dispatch for today: China's critical minerals monopoly.
As you can see, Beijing has quietly secured overwhelming global control over critical mineral mines, processing refineries, and even the shipping ports. They effectively monopolize the essential raw materials required to power the future of global technology.
The impact of this control spans across absolutely crucial industries. We are talking about AI infrastructure, electric vehicles, and advanced defense systems. Honestly, the economic and military stakes of this specific supply chain could not possibly be any higher.
For nations like India and the US, this heavy import dependence creates some severe strategic vulnerabilities. It's pretty simple. You cannot win a technological race if your geopolitical rivals hold the keys to the raw materials.
So how do you counter this? Well, Western nations and their allies really need to execute three major policy shifts. They need to aggressively secure their domestic supply chains, form alternative global partnerships, a strategy often called friendshoring, and systematically reduce their reliance on single-nation imports.
So, bringing this all together, as U.S. military assets are forced to shift between regional crises and emerging rivals are out there securing the supply chains of the future, policy students, you really have to ask yourselves, are we witnessing a permanent realignment of global power? It is definitely something to think about.
Thanks for joining us. Sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stay informed, stay aware, stay ahead. Only on Zenith Global News.